Alright, welcome everyone. This is the third and final installment of the Daiwa Catalina series. If you don't know what this reel is, this is that 4.9 to 1 gear ratio reel that I've been reviewing on a couple YouTube videos. Those are down below, covering the casting and kind of the overall impressions and why I bought it. And I'm gonna break this thing open. I'm gonna show the internals and show those brass gears, see how durable they are, and also see how that clicking drag works too. So stay tuned, and if you want to see other content like this, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment below what you want to see in the future.
All right, now we're going to break into this reel. Couple tools. One is just for this retainer nut. This is it's going to be a Phillips. So I got a bigger Phillips here. You can get a cheap screwdriver set like this. It has a bunch of different sizes at like Home Depot, Lowe's. I got mine from Menards, which is like a Midwest version of those stores. Then you're going to want to look at what your frame screw is. This is just a little bit bigger standard, which I'll be using this one for. And then also your nut. Most times it's going to be a 10 millimeter. I really haven't came across one that's not a 10 millimeter. So it's a pretty safe bet, and that's what this is, just a socket like this. So first you're going to do is take off the screw that holds the handle nut retainer on. That's what prevents, if you didn't have this on, this would eventually loosen up with your handle and all that stuff, and you just have to be tightening on the water a bunch or lose your handle. And one thing I want to point out is when I take reels apart, I like to keep everything organized. So I do it on my upper left right there, and then I just go this way of like the parts assemblies, and I'll show you that. And something else that's kind of nice to have is the schematics. Most reels come with them, and if they don't, a lot of times you can find them online on the manufacturer's website or on different websites. You just do a quick Google search and you'll find it. And a lot of times with these newer Daiwas, I think this would be in there too. The drag star is spring loaded. I know a lot of the Tatulas are. So I like to hold the handle when I do this. I just crack it, and then I use my hand as much as I can so I don't scratch up parts. It's gonna look odd. So this is actually a screw. Most times it'll be a nut that goes on top of the drive shaft that's right here. So right here it's gonna be lefty loosey, righty tighty. On other left-handed reels that are have the nut instead of that screw, it's going to be opposite. There's a washer on the back of the handle, so just keep that in mind. Most times it's on there with grease or oil, so it's not a big deal. This is spring loaded I was talking about. Just gently move the drag star. A lot of times the spring will be on there. Just keep the spring on there just like that, so you don't have to worry about which way it goes or anything like that. This is how your drag loosens and tightens. Just thread this off. This is opposite thread or reverse thread. There's a little groove where your spring goes in. I'll go more into that with the reassembly. That's where your spring is going to sit in. That's underneath that drag star. See, and there's a washer that's underneath there. Just keep that attached on there if you can. I'll talk about why that's important. This is the Clicky Port for your drag. There's two washers in here. You're going to want them always opposite. See how they're curved? I don't know if you can see that. But you're going to want them to be opposite at all times. It doesn't matter which way, just have to be opposite. If they're stacked up like Pringles, like the Pringles chips, then it's wrong. Because that creates a little bit of tension for the drag. A little tiny washer here that goes on top of a bearing that's right there. Set that aside. These. So now all that stuff's done. You do have a bearing right here, but as far as small pieces, you're out of the way. And now you take your screwdriver. Be very careful not to scratch anything up. Hold your frame down too, like the handle side plate that I'm holding right now. And I like to keep these organized as well because sometimes they're different sizes. A good reference for me to find out what size they are is I go to the Hedgehog website, like for Japanese parts, and a lot of times it'll say underneath the reel it'll say, I don't know, whatever, say 7 millimeter, 6 millimeter, and 8 millimeter for your frame screws. And you know that they're different sizes, but I like to just make sure I put them in the order that I take them from. So this one is from my left, this one is from the right, and this one's from the center. I could put it down there to make it look better. So now this is ready to come off. So very gently because you have two springs I'm about to show you. Sometimes they get stuck underneath here. These are the Yoke Springs. You will end up losing those if you're not careful, and then your reel will not work properly. So here, put those there. This is the main drag. It's going to look a little bit different. This is the drag. I mean, this is the gear from my Zillion TWS with the drag washer in there, and then this is what goes on top. So this shiny metal part, that's the difference. The reason why it's different is because of that clicking drag. We're going to see how that comes apart. So let me take this main gear off. This came pretty well lubed. A lot of times Japanese reels won't come lubed very well, which isn't a big thing because a lot of times I take the stock grease off anyway if it's like feels kind of crappy, but this reel feels really smooth out on the water so far, so I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to take this little screwdriver and okay, there we go. It's just like kind of how the stees worked as far as the clicking drag. So you have one drag washer, and then that little clicky, that's going to rub on the inside. I'm trying to get a good camera angle on that. But there's little ridges that run all along the inside, and that's what creates the that drag sound. Which is, it's pretty good for when you know that fish are pulling drag. I don't like it for like Texas rigs or anything. You have your drag locked down, but I use my drag quite a bit when I'm fishing for with crankbaits. So it's a pretty good feature. I don't know. There's a little rubber O-ring on there as well, probably for water, because this is designed to be a saltwater reel, so it's going to be a little bit more robust as far as the water intrusion versus like your stees or any other freshwater dedicated reel. So that's how the clicking drag works. I'm not going to put any lube on here. I'm pretty satisfied with how the reel feels, so I'm just going to keep it as that. Where did I put them? Oh, here it is. This is the pinion gear. That's actually a really big pinion gear, probably because that gear ratio being 4.9 to 1. And what that is basically for every one tooth the pinion gear has, the main gear has 4.9 teeth. I don't know the exact math because I don't know how many teeth are on there. And I'm going to show you, for example, the difference between that 4.9 and the 9.1. This is how small the pinion is in a Zillion TWS for a 9.1. The gear difference is tiny. Look how big a difference that is. Main gear size, fairly close. This is slightly bigger. So basically, this little pinion gear is going to get 9.1 more wear than this main gear. But you still, when you have to replace them, you replace them in pairs because they end up, it just doesn't work out very well. It's just good practice, and it's easier to buy them in pairs anyway. Inside of it has the ported aluminum drag shaft, and also has on the bottom here, you can see that has some more rubber O-rings, probably to help with water intrusion as well. This part right here, this is what makes your drag, your clutch. See how that popped up right there? I can move it again. So when you turn your handle, that's what pops it to be able to engage your spool. Underneath here, more grease on there. This is, Daiwa's been doing this for a little bit. They put the two, for the drive shaft, they put two screws right there, and that's how you get to the bearings or the bushing, depending on what reel you have. It's going to be underneath there. But it's smooth. I'm not going to mess with it at all. This is for your worm gear that moves your line guide back and forth. Yeah, it's a pretty basic Daiwa design in the inside. It's nothing fancy, nothing. If you've taken reels apart before, this is going to be really easy. Nothing to really worry about. All right, this is the Catalina. Before I put it back together, I'm going to try some Zillion parts in here to see if it works. Granted, this is the Zillion, the first generation, 15, 16. So a more compatible version for this is going to be the Zillion HD. So some of these parts might be close to fitting, but not really fit. So they look pretty similar as far as operation and also like the frame size and all that kind of good stuff. Mainly what I'm going to try, I'm going to put these 9.1 gears inside of this Catalina to see if it works. The only thing I can see is this drag how the drag works, the drag system being a little bit different. You might have to put some more washers in there to really make it work. Not 100% sure though. So I'll use the same yoke that goes in the Catalina. Yeah, don't worry, I do have to wash these gears. I haven't cleaned this gear yet, so they're pretty gross. Yeah, so slide this in here. That gear is such a big difference. Okay, so there we go. That's seated down. There's the washer there. Let's see if they fit together. So they fit together so far. It's definitely plausible for sure that you can put 9.1 gears in here. I don't know how it's going to work with the frame going in there, because this gear is a little bit bigger, but we'll find out. Let me see. I guess I'll use the original drag washer. Slap that in there, and there. This looks like it stands up a little bit more, so it might be really tight in there. Might have to use a thinner washer if I plan on doing this for real. Okay, this is the anti-reverse bearing sleeve. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but this one's keyed in here. This is from the Zillion TWS. So I'm going to just put that in here just because it's a little bit different design on here. So that's going to be the one part that's different. Hopefully I remember that. If not, I can refer back to this video. Yoke Springs. A little bit. See, these have a little bit of grease on them, so that's good. What that does is it helps keep the springs in place when you put the reel back together. Oh, before I put this back together, one more thing I'm going to try out. I'm going to see if these bumpers, let me see here. What I mean by bumpers, that's the colored part that you see here. They are a different size, as you can see right here. The green and the pink. Green's from the Zillion and the pink is from the Catalina, of course. Let's see, definitely different size, for sure. So they go on the side plate here. Too big. You're either one gonna have to cut the frame a little bit if you're dead set on having a different color, besides red, because they do make red for the Catalina, or the Zillion HD might also have a smaller one. I'm not sure because I don't have one. So that will not work. Let's see if the holes are at least the same size. So just in case you want to get different colors. So this is the frame of the Zillion. So the holes are the same size difference. It's just the length of the actual bumper itself is different. Set those aside. Okay, I'll put this back in there. This does not sit in there as good. I have to be careful about that. Okay, now I'm just going to put this back together. Lining up. There we go. Fits together normal. Okay, now, like how I lined it. Let me move these out of the way. And that. Okay, so now how I lined out all this up, this is what's going to really help. My screw, I know that if I held the reel like this last time, grab this screw, I know that this is the screw that goes here. And a good tip, if you have a smartphone, most of you do, record yourself doing it. That way you know if you mess up, you can always go back to see, backtrack your steps. I'm just going to screw these all back in. Not super tight because I'll show you in a second, but it's basically how you put a car tire back on is you do that star pattern. It's going to be a similar, like a more basic way, but similar fashion on a fishing reel. Just get it snug in there. You want to hold your side plate down like how I've been holding. You want to hold that firm against there so none of the, like those yoke springs or your bumper comes loose. Sometimes your bumper can actually come loose and you don't notice it, and it's inside your reel. It can get jammed up in your gears and do a bunch of damage before you notice it. Go back here. I'll tighten this one a little bit more than I did for the other ones. So before I really tighten these down, I'm going to put it together and do like a functions test to it, because you don't want to get everything all buttoned down and then your reel doesn't work because you skipped a step or you forgot to put something on backwards or whatever. So this thin little washer, this goes on top of the bearing, that bearing that's right inside the anti-reverse bearing. Make sure that sits nice and flush. And then it's going to be your drag clicker. And remember I talked about how these washers that go inside of it have to be stacked opposite. Basically how it is, just turn them. All you have to do is turn them and see if there's a gap anywhere. So that is not correct because they're stacked onto each other. So I just take one, just put it on top of the other one, see what happens. Okay, that doesn't work, so flip it. And now, no, they're stacked. So just flip it over. In there, it doesn't matter which way, as long as they're not stacked together. Put one down, and the other one down. And now to get tension on those, that's what this, and this also allows it to slide when you're adjusting your, I like to put the non-shiny part down, because that's generally how it comes. Not a big difference. This nut here has that hollowed out trough right there. It is reverse threaded because it's a left-handed reel. Make sure you're not, all these parts should go on there with very little resistance. So that, I almost cross-threaded that one. What I like to do, I just like press it down lightly and it's twisted the opposite direction that it's supposed to go until it pops down like that. And you feel that it's straight. Just keep doing it. Okay. Very little resistance it should take. I'm going to do this a couple times because I definitely, this feels like it's a pretty soft metal and I do not want to cross thread. Okay, it's going on there pretty easy now. I like to hold my spool at this point. Just it helps stabilize your drive shaft a little bit. You just want to get it slightly snug. You don't want it super tight. This is what your drag star actually turns. That's the function of your drag star. Then you have your spring in there still. Put it on just like that. Now remember, this drag star on here does not spin, so you hold it down. Your handle is going to line up like this. See how it's like a kind of like an oval? So I like to do whatever point is not on there. I get everything fitted down first, like that. Now whatever point you have on there, like that, just hold it like that. After you push it down, make sure your washer's on there. Look how easy this is. You just put your handle on there. Good to go. Now you can transition your hands to your handle like this. Put your screw down. I like to get everything hand started, nice and easy. I like to use tools as little as possible so I don't scrape stuff up. And what you're going to want to do with this hole, your nut is generally going to either point toward it, one of the points of the nut, or one of the flat parts of the nut are going to point directly toward here. That's how your handle retainer is going to go on straight. So after I have it hand tightened on there, I just give it a little, you don't want it super tight. It's a little bit past finger tight. And if you have to round up a little bit with pressure, that's fine. And able to get that point lined up here. Because watch. Lines up perfectly every time. Now this little guy right here is your last part. A lot of times I'll do it just for consistency's sake. This is where you want to test out your reel. So tighten up your drag if you need to tighten up your drag. This is a little bit different setup because I did put those other gears in here, which it feels like my drag's like really tight in there. I think it's because it's thicker. Remember how that washer is thicker? Yeah, it feels more natural if I have my drag looser. But yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't want to fit in there. If I have my drag to like a functional, yeah, it just feels gross. So it's plausible, I think, if you have some Zillion HD gears or if you mess around with the washer that goes on top of the drag, like the metal washer, or just change I think you have to make it thinner. It could work. You could put Zillion gears in here. So it's plausible. I'm not saying it's complete. But that is how you put the reel back together. It's not a true functions test just because I did have different gears in there. Something else I'm going to test out is, I'm not going to bore you guys with that. I'm going to test out the cast control knob. This is what it looks like on the Zillion. It's a silver one right here. Looks exactly the same texture and everything. So let me just undo that. Oh, another O-ring there. And take this one apart. Everything looks the function exactly the same. Slap that on there. Make sure I don't not cross threading. You feel like a weird clicking first, and then the actual clicking starts. Yeah, it's working. There's no problem with that compatibility. So if you're looking for different colored parts, it does work from the Zillion TWS. Same size cast control knob. The pink color might turn a lot of anglers off, so just gives you another option not to have pink. Okay. And then, so that we went over before, spools are compatible. I did that in my first video. Bumpers, not really compatible with the original Zillion TWS. Cast control knob is compatible. The side plate won't be because they are secured in different fashions. This one has the nice lever and it just pushes and pops out. Super nice. A lot better than doing this. Unscrewing it right here. A lot better. So that's the breakdown of it right there.
All right, as you can see, that it wasn't too bad to break open. It was pretty basic. Just no special tools needed. Just 3 screws that hold the side plate together, and also your standard 10mm that holds the handle on. It was pretty cool to see how the click and drag worked, and yeah, I think it's definitely worth the money. And it seems like it's built tough. And long as you maintain it, grease it once or twice a year, depending on how much you end up using it, it should last for a very, very long time. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and catch you next time.